she was in a choir in LA, the LA Youth Children's Choir, and one day I picked her up from rehearsal, and she was speaking with the conductor or the choir director, and she was obsessed with the tuning fork, and he kept hitting it and putting it in different places on the piano, on her head, all these different places, and there's just something struck me, I think partially about her wonder as a child over what this strange thing was, and then it just really made me think about that particular sound, which is one of the great things about kids, because you have to sort of look at stuff through their eyes. So I sort of rediscovered that sound, a sound that I, of course, know very well. So it just stuck with me. And then when it came time to end the piece, and with the children's choir, I think especially, it just related very much to my life, I guess.
Well, so we all have to be we have to really pay attention to the tuning forks at the very end, because they're very small.
Yes.
But you're right, let's start at the very beginning. A Requiem. I mean, what the hell? When did this start?
Well, I've been a fan of Requiem masses for many years. In fact, my entire operatic journey began with the Requiem. It began with Verdi's Requiem, a great recording with U.C. Bierling and Leontine Price, and my mother and aunt, Anna. The three of us listened to it one evening when I was about 13, and by the end of that 2-hour stint, I was completely obsessed with opera. The next day, I just started this illness, and that's all. It's the only music I could listen to and that I could relate to. And it kind of cooled down a little bit when I was in my 30s, but I still adore it. It's still my number one love is opera. So it all began with the Requiem, and then. But I didn't have the idea of writing one or composing one for now. It was, I have to give credit to Arthur Pita, who's a choreographer who's actually making a ballet of it, choreographing a ballet which will be at the Royal Ballet in a couple of years. And anyways, he during COVID, he choreographed a beautiful dance to my Agnus Dei, which is a piece that I composed, that I sang, and that I still sing for my album 1, 2. Anyways, he did something for the Royal Ballet, and there was, during COVID, and there was no audience members, and it was, live stream and so forth. And in that process, he just very nonchalantly at one point said, Rufus, you should do the whole Mass. And I thought that was a pretty interesting idea, needless to say, with what was going on with COVID, specifically, amongst other things. And then I just sort of mentioned it to my husband, Jorn Weisberg, who I work with, and then he mentioned it to my publisher, and then next thing you know, we had like 7 commissioners, or something, a large amount of people who suddenly wanted it. So I definitely had this sense that there was a desire for this new piece or this idea, and I just, my project was launched, but it wasn't really any kind of purposeful movement on my part. It just sort of came about.
Just for us to get an idea, so we all follow you on social media, so you're either in Greece or in Hawaii, yeah. or you're performing concerts.
Yeah.
When did you start the actual writing of this work?
Well, I started it near the end of COVID, and so I guess in 2022 or something,
Do you remember where?
Yeah, well, I started in LA. And actually one of the elements of it that is very important is where I compose it. There's a beautiful, where I compose most of it, but there's a beautiful old mansion in Hollywood, or it's actually in Silver Lake in Los Angeles, called the Paramore, which is this wild estate that used to belong to a silent movie star, and the owner is a good friend of mine, and she let me use a wing of the mansion right next to the ballroom, and the mansion itself had been at one point a Catholic girls' school, and so it was full of crosses and Virgin Marys and stuff. So I had the proper environment, which is It's always important. And then I don't know, I started it there. And, you know, whether it was, the other, and this is why I bring up LA again, is that one of the other main influences was, of course, you know, the ecological situation that we're all in right now, and the dire one. And we had, even before, obviously before the fires had just occurred in LA, we'd had a couple of really horrible ones a few years earlier, and those had really affected me deeply. And the poem, Darkness by Byron, really was sort of a reaction. I reacted, that was a reaction to the fires in LA, not the present ones, of course, but it was bizarre because, you know, the LA premiere was right after what happened, you know, this summer and stuff, so, or when was it? Where are we? It's not in the summer now, whenever it was. So I can't remember anything. But anyway, so yeah, so that's sort of how it started, with disasters.
Okay, you answered at least 10 for my first questions.
Okay.
Where did it come? I mean, you said something about the influence of classical music in your life, but when did you actually think, because you wrote Prima Donna, the opera, then Hadrian, when did you actually think, okay, I'm now going to start embarking on classical music? Was it a defining moment?
Look, I did go to music school briefly. I went to McGill, the conservatory there. I didn't do particularly well. And what's fun is that I went to the conservatory thinking it would be this kind of wild party and sort of this bohemian experience, which very quickly turned out to be not. And it was more like going to engineering school. Anyway, so I didn't react very well. But one of the nice things is that it just so happened, I was in the choir, I joined the choir at that point, and that year that I was there, they did Verdi's Requiem. So I got to actually sing it. And that I felt was sort of my sort of farewell, I should say, to my, you know, conservatory upbringing. I didn't take piano for many, many years, so I know music. But anyway, so then I went off and embarked on my pop career. But I have all these tricks that I'd learned from years of listening to opera that a lot of people in my generation weren't aware of, or even my parents' generation. So it sort of, I think it kind of differentiated my sound a bit, that sort of the classical leanings that I had. But then after several years, I felt, you know, I kind of want to give back to that form of music, all that it had given me. And I wrote Prima Donna, and you know, and then, you know, that was a very dramatic experience. It was around the time of my mother's death. I also expected the classical world to kind of welcome me with open arms, and, you know, feel, you know, grateful to have such an amazing person like myself amongst them, which was not the case. You know, it was a tough, I learned pretty fast it was a tough world, and that you had to really go, it was very rigorous. So I chose to maintain the battle, and now finally, after, you know, several years and several compositions, I feel like they've started to sort of accept me on a more profound level, which is how it should be, you know.
Very good. No, and
it takes a while.
But still, you're producing and you're writing albums, pop albums.
Yes.
Do you think that at some moments, if you listen, for instance, to the influences in your Shakespeare album, you feel like pop and classical are touching each other?
Well, I think one of the things that fascinates me even to this day, but really shocked me when I started to do both disciplines, was how wide the gulf is between both worlds. They really are on separate planets, classical and pop music, and I don't necessarily consider, you know, my job to bring them together or anything. And there are influences that just naturally, you know, travel between both areas. But it is crazy the chasm that exists. So I treat that as a kind of advantage, because I can then, you know, teach each side a little bit of what I've learned from the other, and it is this, and for me also creatively it's fabulous, because I get pretty sick of both of them, you know, after working so hard, and I can then, you know, just, you know, once I've done a pop tour and I'm exhausted from touring, I can then say, look, I gotta write an opera, so I gotta stay home and I get into that, and then I get bored of that and I go on tour, and I'm schizophrenic, basically.
Great.
In a nice way.
We need a bit your help because we're going to listen to the Dream Requiem, which is about 1 hour and 50 minutes long.
Yes.
We're going to recognize perhaps some of your homages to Verdi, to Puccini. We hear obviously Rufus Wainwright, your songs in them. If you have to help us, it has about 17 movements. We can all read that in a program booklet. Are there certain sections that you think we should focus on? How do we just turn the clocks back?
I think look, my main objective with my classical work is to create music that is as gripping as the music which changed my life many years ago. I think, look, I admire so much people who've gone through the system of the conservatory, especially obviously the musicians themselves and the singers and stuff. Like being able to work with that caliber of education is thrilling for me. But I do find that as a composer, I might have dodged a couple of bullets in terms of getting out of that sort of tradition of just having to follow what's academically supposed to happen at that time. I was able to step out and just really compose what I wanted, what I heard and what I feel. So I guess, the most important thing for me is that it's moving and that it's and that it has a sort of drama to it, and that you cry at a certain point. Like every great opera that I go to, I always cry at some moment. So that's very important for me. So there might be some tears. Hopefully you all get really sad. But then also there's hope and yes, there's a little bit of hope.
And since we're among friends here, and we won't tell that, we follow you a long time. What's next? Are there plans in the pipeline for the future?
Yeah, no, I've been asked to do many things. I will admit that, as I said before, I'm so excited to go into the studio and make a pop record, just because it has been very. I miss that. So I'm looking forward to making a pop record and touring that, and so that's sort of the next plan. But as you said, there are many other iterations of this piece that are going to be created. I'm very excited about the ballet, which will come to the Royal Ballet, and if anything, I just want to be able to spend more time with my kid, Viva, and my husband Norm. I think it's great.
One recommendation from somebody in the audience. Probably around Easter in Holland we all go a bit nuts. Well, because in Holland we have something called the Matthew and the John Passion by Bach.
Yes.
So everybody in supermarkets, in schools, everybody's singing Bach.
My husband's German and the same. Yeah.
Exactly. So somebody from the audience said, "Wouldn't that be an idea? A passion?"
Well, one, I don't know about a passion, but I'm going to keep writing pieces. But I've noticed in the hall that there's quite a few names on the wall. I'm looking at you, Dauber. But I'll just keep writing what I want to do. But maybe I'll just keep doing pieces here in this beautiful, beautiful hall, which is one of the most amazing rooms I've ever played in, and to have my piece here is such a thrill. But one of my dreams is to be one of these names on this wall. So one day, probably after I'm dead. But anyway,
the director of the hall is present. He's listening now, so
the idea's been planted.
Yeah. Rufus, thank you so much. We're going to take a break, have a cup of coffee, a glass of water, and then we're going to cry. Thank you.
Thank you.